You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 1 hour 90.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here and he's back. It's Darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. And I think you mentioned when we were off air that last time Joe Cullen won a title, I took off the week following his Euro Tour title. This time I took off the week off before, but I'm back and ready to go. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. And another busy show. We promised you last week that we'd bring you a chat with Deta Hedman, and we've got her on this week to have a chat about qualifying for the World Championship. We've also got Andy Hamilton, who's back playing in the European Championship. He calls over from Germany. And you also hear from the director of the Dutch Darts Association. The news coming out over the weekend that the Dutch Open for 2021 has been pushed back to September rather than the usual February date. So those three coming up in a little while. But let's get into some chat on the European Tour. And as soon as it came back, as soon as it ended, the final event of the 2020 European Tour at the weekend in Riesa, second European Tour title for Joe Cullen. Is this now the time for him to finally kick on and reach that first TV final and ultimately win his first TV title in the PDC?
Well, he is, now as a result of winning this, the number one seed in the European Championship. And okay, it's a very abbreviated season, less than a third as long as we've gone and used to the last few years, up to 13 European Tour events. Normally this year just 4. But still should not take away from the fact that those 4, he did the most. He won the most money, and therefore he's the top seed. And I said, what was it now, just a couple weeks ago, that if you've earned that top seed, you deserve to be considered one of the leading contenders for the event. I said that for Glenn Durrant in the Premier League, and he went on and won it. Granted, he did not bring his best darts over those couple of days, but that didn't, or those couple matches, I should say, or a couple hours, but that didn't matter. He got it done when he needed to. And Joe Cullen this past weekend, I can't say he played his best darts in Riesa. There were flashes. There were moments when he got the lead over Van Gogh and he bullied him, and that's why he came home on top and lifted the title. But he did enough over the course of the year to be the number one seed, and therefore he has to be talked as one of the favorites going into this tournament. And maybe this is just that time. He's come close a few times. He had match darts to beat Gary Anderson in the match play a couple years ago before Anderson went on and lifted the title in the best final of all time. That's how close he was possibly to having that big TV breakthrough. He hasn't kicked on since then. He's dropped out until this past week out of the top 16, but he's been there or thereabouts still. This, I think, is now that opportunity because he's going to be going in with confidence. It's a field that, no disrespect to the players who qualified, it is not as strong as it would have been top to bottom if we had a full season, because in the end you only had to do enough over 4 events, and that could be just one big run. So you see more of the big names missing out. You see a lot of players with less experience getting in. This is Joe Cullen's opportunity, or at least his next great opportunity. He'll have more. He's still a young player, but yeah, I think this is the chance.
Yeah, you mentioned at the top of the show you weren't here to talk about his first European Tour title win back in September last year. He beat Michael Van Gogh in the final of that event as well. And myself and our guest co-host that week, Hannah, talked about it and said, is that going to be his time? And after that, it's fair to say he didn't quite kick on. We didn't see him go on these big runs in the TV events, went out early doors in a lot of them. More recent times, well, you only got to go back 5 weeks ago, we were seeing him lose 6-0 on TV with a 83 average, and at that point you're thinking, has the moment for him gone? But still very young for darts, 31. He's got a lot more years ahead of him, and the last few weeks we've seen some signs that maybe he's coming into some form. The autumn series, he had some big averages there. He had a final and a semi-final. The World Grand Prix, one of the last big events that we've had on the calendar, got to the quarterfinals, and some big moments for him in those games. Went to a deciding leg against, I think it was Ian White and Johnny Clayton, and he came through both of those. 2-0 up against Dave Chisholm in the quarterfinals and lost out 3-2, but there have been signs that he is coming back into some form. And you can look at the weekend as well. On that final day, I think he was around about 50% on the doubles, 96 plus average for the tournament, 14 180. So he said himself he didn't feel like he played that well, and maybe it's a sign as well that, okay, he's won these European Tour titles now. He wants to kick on. He wants to get to that next step, and that is to go deep in these big events again. It was 2017-18 time that he was going on some deep runs. The match play you mentioned. What about the European Championship 2 years ago now that he got to the semi-finals? He was 6-1 down against Rob Cross, came back and won 10-8. The semi-final, I think he had a double 9, if memory serves me right, to win that game against Simon Whitlock, lost out in a deciding leg. So he's been close before. We've said it time and time again that this is his time to get it. And yeah, he goes in as the top seed this week for the European Championship. Only Bill Taylor and Michael Van Gerwen have done that in the past for this tournament. So confidence-wise, I don't think it's going to be any higher than it is right now. And yeah, you look at the field of players, you look at how the draws panned out, I think he will fancy his chances of going on a decent run this week.
So now that's 2 European titles for Joe Cullen, both over Michael Van Gerwen, as Michael Van Gerwen took a 5th consecutive Euro Tour final defeat. Not 5 consecutive events, but 5 consecutive times he's made the final, he's lost. And it's fair to say it was an up and down weekend for the world number 1. And it's now 7 stage events since lockdown without a title. What do you make of his current play?
Yeah, it really is a strange one. The 5 consecutive defeats in European Tour finals, and before that, he'd gone 17, won 7, winning finals in the European Tour. He lost 6-0 to Peter Wright, I think, early 2017, and after that went on an absolute rampage. When he got to the finals of these events, he was cleaning up, and you just got to look at his record in that tour. He's won by far and away more than any other player. But recent times, the last 5-6 months since this lockdown's come in, and we've just seen the tour come back the last few months, though, there have been a lot of questions about Michael Van Gerwen, and you look at this past weekend in Riesa as a small sample of games that he's played, and there's signs of him coming back into some good form, but there's also been some signs where you just can't see him getting back to that form. And at the minute, him averaging over 100 is starting to become more of a rare occurrence. And we think back 3 or 4 years ago when he was at his most dominant, he was rattling off 100 plus averages for fun. He was going 15, 20 games, 100 plus average every single time. And I think he only had 14 games on the European Tour this year, and I think he's had, 6 of those games, I think, were 95 plus average, so not even getting to the 100 plus, only 1 I think he had. So it is a really interesting case at the minute for Michael Van Gerwen, and all parts of his games are not quite clicking. There's some games where his scoring will be there and his doubles might not, and there'll be other times when you look at the game against James Wade when he got that 102 average and he put in 143, 144 checkouts, 6 out of 9 on the doubles, comes back an hour or so later for his semi-final against Mensur Suljovic, misses 25 darts at double, and then finishes up in a last leg 140 checkout. It's really difficult to kind of assess and put into words really what is going on with the world number 1 at the moment. And when we talked about it recently, I thought it was to do with the crowds. When the behind closed doors events, he's not won those. Okay, there was a little bit of a crowd for these European Tour events. I think they had 250 in the end of the weekend, but I still think that is one of the big factors, is that he's missing that buzz that you get off a big crowd, because at the moment we're not allowed the big crowds, and players, they're making the most of it when he's putting in these performances. He's there for the taking, and Mensur Suljovic should have beaten him in that semi-final, but Joe Cullen, he took advantage of it, and he was the one that came out on top.
Yeah, you say if he averages over 100, it's a good sign, but this last weekend averaging over 90 was the exception. In 5 matches, he only did it twice, and one of those was the final where he barely got over the 90. If he had somehow been able to come back and win that match, you would think he would have been under 90 because he would have had more darts at double. And that's been a big part of it, is his struggling to hit doubles. You mentioned the 20-something missed darts at double against Mensur Suljovic, who missed a few of his own to win that match 7-5, 7-6 earlier on. But he also missed a bunch against Andy Hamilton. He missed 7 match darts before finally closing it out after the hammer narrowly missed the bull in the final leg. So he's been missing darts in key times, but he's also just not been scoring that well. He's been having way too many visits early and middle of legs where he's been putting in 58, 60, occasionally hitting a 93 last dart in hand to get that treble, to get it, save the visit. That's not the Michael Van Gerwen we expect. We expect him saving a visit by getting a 1-3-4, switching down and hitting 2 treble 19s. That's the standard he used to be at, where you would say a 1-3-4 is what it's saving a visit for Van Gerwen. Now we're saying a last dart treble 18 is saving the visit. And that's the decline in his just overall consistency. I still don't know what it is. I think some of it is motivation, because we have seen in key moments him being able to get up, especially in the World Championships. Okay, he didn't win it last year, but he still played pretty well, and he just ran it. I don't think anyone was going to beat Peter Wright on New Year's Day this year. Previously on the World Championships, he was playing very well. We've seen it obviously the previous year where he romped to a third world title. We've seen it at times as well, winning back-to-back World Grand Prix, but we haven't seen it at all this year. And I just have to think it's some motivation thing at this point, because his head isn't where it needs to be. And maybe getting a big crowd back will help, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. And if that's what he's relying on, then his time as world number one is about to come to an end. Maybe not forever, but at least that consecutive streak of world number one is going to come to an end, because he's not going to win the world title playing anything like this. He's not going to come close to winning the world title playing like this. He was lucky to make the final this weekend, and that is, credit to him. He hit when he needed to win those matches, so you can't take that away from him. But he ain't going to win the world championship playing like this. And if he doesn't win the world championship, he's probably not world number one on January 2nd.
Now let's move on to our first guest on this week's show, and he's a player who's going to be back in the field for the European Championship this week. It's the former World Championship finalist, Andy Hamilton. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the former World Championship finalist, Andy Hamilton. Thanks for the time again, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. Ready for this, so let's get some more info out there.
Definitely. Well, as I was saying off air just before we started, we last had you on the show around Christmas time 2018, a few weeks before your debut at the Lakeside for the 2019 BDO World Championship. Not the result you were looking for on that occasion, but how did you find the experience of playing at Lakeside in a World Championship for the first time?
Yeah, I think for me going to Lakeside, it was probably like I was a bit of an awe of it, because when I was a kid, I think everybody wanted to play a dream venue. My dream venue was Lakeside, and obviously when I got my PDC tour card, I thought I was never imagined I could ever play there again. So when that chance came about, probably not the right way to get it, but I ended up playing there, and I was probably in all of the places. Probably why I didn't play so well. I probably tried hard to impress.
It was only a week or so later after that you were back at Q School trying to win your tour card. Did you feel like there was enough time to get over that defeat and get ready for Q School, or were you still thinking about it a little bit?
Yeah, I think everything was still in my head. Obviously, the personal circumstances with him, they weren't clear, and also I didn't have a path forward to look forward to it at the time. So I think a lot of things were accumulating in my head, and I still probably wasn't right to try and go for my tour card, but I had to try just see if I was ready or not. And obviously, I wasn't.
So you missed out on Q School, but a quarter-final on the first weekend of the Challenge Tour in 2019, which got you to play the first two Players' Championship events that year. What was it like being back on the Pro Tour for that weekend?
Yeah, it was great. It felt a bit strange at first, because obviously you've been there, you've been one of the top ones for a long time, and to go there just through the Challenge Tour, it felt really different. But I brought myself down to, I'd lost my tour card, I got started from scratch again. I wasn't the player I wasn't. Tried to get back to where I should be. So it was all a process of learning again, really, for me.
The rest of 2019, you played the Challenge Tour, also the BDO circuit. We saw you in the World Trophy, and then comes the World Masters, and we're talking a year to the day when that tournament finished. I was there for the week. What was it like to play in that first day with the redraw and everything that went on that day?
Yeah, it's just a shambles. I mean, everything was just was so disorganised. It took all my concentration away from the old tournament. I think for a lot of players, and I think that's why I saw a lot of seasons going out on that day. It just had meeting after meeting with players, and he couldn't make a decision himself, and he's asking players, what do you want me to do? And it shut me down to the players, and it's just a shambles of an event, and it's a shame where it is now, but at the end I think it was there because it was meant to be.
Definitely. And the start of this year, you were seeded for the BDO World Championship. This time at the O2, you lost out to the eventual winner in the end, Wayne Warren. Again, more problems off the oche with the prize fund being slashed. But how much was that playing on the players' minds that week?
Yeah, I think we knew before the event was going to go ahead. I think everyone knew it wasn't going to be what we wanted, and sometimes you just got to take that knock back and just try and play darts, because you knew the funds weren't going to be there, so we just started playing for pride at the end of the day, and I think that's what I did. And I played a good account of myself against Wayne, and my darts was gradually coming back then. I think I had a 95 average against him, so it proves I'm competing again.
Yeah, it definitely was. And shortly after that, you were back at Q School, and you come so close on the first day to getting that card, just losing out to Jason Lowe in the quarterfinals, 2 wins away from getting that card. I mean, the final day, you go in second on that order merit. What was it like playing that final day?
I was more relieved, and obviously I was bothered. I wasn't bothered, but I thought I'd have my tour card there, and I think I was celebrating on that last day rather than thinking about I've got to get more points. So in the end, I think the last day was probably a relaxing day for me, and I didn't know for definite I was in there, but there was very little chance of not getting my tour card.
So what were the emotions like when you got the nod to say that you'd won that tour card and you were going to be back on the PDC circuit full time again?
It was a dream back to me again. Obviously, when I lost my tour card in 2017, and I just thought, is this me now? And I just said, no, I don't want this. I want to finish my career on the PDC. So I worked really hard and I buckled down. I tried to get all the personal stuff clear in my head, and eventually that happened. And I thought it never happened, but it just goes to show, no matter what happens in life, if you strive to get something, you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, you look back on your career, you've reached a lot of heights, winning titles, getting to World Championship finals, major finals, Premier League playoffs, and then to drop off the tour like you did. And not many players come back. What's been the inspiration to keep fighting and get back to where you were?
Just because I love darts. I love darts that much, and obviously I felt like when you fall out of love with darts, it's so hard. You can't get motivated to practice, you can't motivate to play, you don't know where the confidence is going to come from when you're winning and losing. So it's just all about just trying harder and harder. And obviously, when the wins come on board, they make you confident. And obviously, I met a lot of friends on the BDO. That side, the players on the BDO side, there was a bit more fun there. So, Joe, they made you feel welcome, and that made me get back in love with the game again.
It's fair to say it's not been the most ideal of years to come back on the tour with the virus and the 4-month break that we had during the middle of the year, and things not quite back to normal at the moment. But how have you found the last 6 or 7 months?
Yeah, it's been quite difficult, obviously, with personal problems all still in my head, and I've had to try to battle them with the depression, so it's been hard for me, but I've got Chloe beside me, my rock, and she's kept me going, and I think just keep practicing, and obviously it's hard to get motivated to practice, but I've done it, and it's still been tough. It's like saying, a year I've got my tour card and all this trouble, but it's the same for every player, so we just got to get on with it, and whatever's going to come is going to come.
And this past weekend, you were back on that stage in Rees for the final European Tour event of the year. You beat Stephen Bunting 6-5, a brilliant 12-darter to make it 5-all. You both start the decider really strongly as well, and you just edge it out. And you put on Twitter the last final day on European Tour event, you can't remember, June 2017, so it's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and bringing back that memory is really good for me. And also to get back there again now, and obviously now I'm at European Championships, I'm just pleased with myself. Whatever happens now is a bonus, and to get to this situation, I didn't even plan to get into European Championships, but with everything going on, it made it not easy, but there's less tournaments to qualify for a lot of people, so it just made it a little tad easier, but it's still not easy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that win against Stephen put you in that top 32 going into the final day. And in terms of qualifying for these big PDC major events, aside from the UK Open, the last few years we've seen you come through the Riley's qualifiers. Of course, this year you had your tour card, but probably the first one that you've really qualified for through the PDC since I think the Players' Championship finals end of 2016. So how proud are you to have done that?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's just like saying it's on the starting block and just another tick in the box for me starting the PDC. I'm just being realistic now on the tour again. I've got to just take small steps, and this is another small step towards getting into the World Championships and all.
Touching on your final game of the weekend, you lost out to Michael van Gerwen in a decider in the last 16. On the stage after, I don't know if you saw it, he spoke about you trying every trick in the book. Do you know what he was talking about? Because watching it, it didn't seem like you were doing anything untoward.
No, I didn't think I did anything untoward. I just play how I play. I've no need to go slow. That's how I play darts, and I've played Michael nearly 50 times now. To say something like that, I think he's got an issue, nothing other than my game. I think he's just trying to pick at things, that's all. Things I don't take notice of it anyway. It doesn't affect me any.
Fair enough. Well, it's been a long drive for you yesterday. I think over 300 miles you had to do to get to Oberhausen for the European Championship starting on Thursday afternoon. What's the plan now for the next few days before then?
Yeah, hopefully get a bit of chill time, go out, do a bit of walking, just take in a bit of the scenery, and hopefully get a chance to get a bit of practice in here ready for Thursday, and just come and enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, it's going to be a busy end to the year. You've got this coming up this weekend, the Winter Series Grand Slam qualifier, and you're hoping to get into the World Championship. How much are you looking forward to the end of this year?
Yeah, obviously it's starting slow form of the year, and I'm just building on wins now, so it's going to only get better for me, and I'm sure I'm competing well enough to earn more ranking points, so it's just about looking forward to the next games now and hoping it all comes together.
Well, Andy, it's nice to catch up with you. Congratulations on getting your tour card back at the start of this year, and wish you all the best in Oberhausen for the European Championship as well.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much, pal. You take care.
Thanks again to Andy for joining us. Now let's move the chat on to the European Championship. It's a stacked run of events coming up now, starting with the European Championship this Thursday and a bumper 16-game session to kick things off on Thursday at 3 o'clock here in the UK. How excited are you for this weekend and the 4 days of darts coming up?
I'm definitely excited. The European Championship is one of my favorite events because I'm a big fan of the European Tour. And while I said a little while ago that the field might be weaker on paper because of the shortened season, that also actually makes me more interested in it because we're going to get to see otherwise many of them wouldn't have qualified or would have been unlikely to have qualified. You know, we just heard from Andy Hamilton. He has not been in this event now for, is it 6 or 7 years? He's back in the field. He very well might not have been had it been a full season, but he had that good run. Could have been even better this past weekend in Riesa, which gets him back into the field. You know, we're seeing as well players like Ross Smith, who was right on the bubble last year, Mike Ivanhoven, who, you know, maybe he would have kept it going for full 13, but you wouldn't have expected it getting in. Martin Kliermacher, he might have, but get to see him in his debut year in the PDC get into the field. So we're seeing some players that we otherwise might not have. We also seen players seated much lower that we wouldn't have expected to be seated so low, as well as people like Adrian Lewis missing out. Missing out, obviously, was Simon Whitlock. We talked about that I was about to say last week, but I wasn't on last week. Maybe you talked about it last week, but I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I like the fact that this field is completely different than it'll normally be, not to mention that you see players near the top of the seeds that you won't, which leads to some very interesting and potentially interesting early round matches. I love the European Championships, and I think this year, because of the shortened season, we get a unique field, and I think that's a good thing.
I'm with you there, and go back 12 months ago last year, I was at the World Masters, so I missed quite a lot of the European Championship because they were both on at the same weekend. Roll forward to 2020 and the last weekend of October, we sadly don't get a World Masters. We don't get a European Championship. It's been pushed back to this weekend, which, I'm looking forward to. I think I only watched one session last year. It was the Thursday night when Ross Smith beat Michael van Gerwen, who averaged 105. I think he beat him in the decider that night. So, no, I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of it than I did last year. And, yeah, you mentioned we've got some big names missing. Gary Anderson, of course, doesn't play the European Tour circuit. Dimitri Van den Berg, the World Match Play champion, he didn't qualify for these last few events, so he didn't have a chance. Glenn Durrant, of course, we've got to send our best wishes to him. Last week, testing positive for COVID-19, so we had to pull out of the last European Tour and ultimately pull out of the European Championship this week, so wishing him a speedy recovery. Adrian Lewis, Simon Whitlock, Stephen Bunting, there's some big names there that are missing out, but it does make it exciting because we're going to see a lot more different faces than we're used to seeing on these TV events. And okay, this has been a strange year for darts. It's also been an exciting year though. We look at the TV events that we've had since the lockdown, and there's been a lot of shocks. There's been some great games and some surprises. Dimitri winning the World Match Play, of course, the Premier League final being between two debutants playing in their first year in the Premier League. The Grand Prix, of course, Dirk van Dijvenbode getting to the final, and hopefully we might see a bit more of that this week. Starting on the Thursday, we'll see some more games, some more excitement, and the first round, best of 11, is a short race in that first round, so we could potentially see some shocks. There's some exciting games in that first round. As we know, the format is based on the European Tour Order of Merit, and having just the four events, it's lent itself to some interesting ties. Mentioned Suljovic, Dalgoni in the first round, and of course second round we could potentially see the world number 2 and the world number 3 play against each other, Gerwin Price and Peter Wright. So it's got the makings of an exciting 4 days, and yeah, like you, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Now, we'll get to the top 4 seeds in a little bit, but we'll talk about the 4 quarters, especially since there were only 4 events to determine this field. Looking at the draw, which of the 4 quarters do you think is the toughest to predict the winner from?
I think I've got to go with that third quarter of the draw. You've got Gerwin Price, second seed, and as I just mentioned, potential clash with Peter Wright, the world champion, in the second round, which immediately you've got the second and third players in the world rankings in that quarter of the draw. You've also got, as I said, Mensah Suljovic, Dalgoni just underneath, and then underneath that, one of the players that is playing some of the best stuff at the moment, maybe not getting the rewards that he perhaps deserves for his performances, Christoph Ratajski. I think that is, for me, the toughest quarter of the draw to call. Beyond that, I think the other 3 are quite similar. You've got some players that are in good form in those quarters of the draw. You've also got some big names that maybe aren't quite at their top of their game, and if they turn up, then they'll look at the draw, look at their quarter and think that's a good chance of making a semi-final. But fourth quarter, you've got Jose de Souza in there, who's we've seen a couple of weeks ago put in some magnificent performances on that stage on the European Tour, coming into this in some good form. the top two quarters again. You've got Michael van Gerwen in there in the top half. Rob Cross, a former world champion, Devon Peterson, a winner on the European Tour, Joe Cullen, the man of the moment, the top seed. But I think I'm just going to give it to that third quarter, because there is, out of all four, the most quality, and the players that you think, wow, if these games turn out how we're going to think they're going to turn out, they're going to be the ones to watch.
I'm going in a different direction, but I agree. I think there's a good case for all of them. This is quite possibly the most wide open European Championship ever. And again, a lot of that comes down to a point you made a little while ago, that the top seed has always been either Phil Taylor or Michael van Gerwen here, and this time it's not. And one, because Phil Taylor's retired, and two, because Michael van Gerwen has struggled. And when you don't have that dominant force, it becomes more wide open. But even on a quarter-by-quarter level, there's a lot to be said that these are all difficult to pick. You mentioned that third quarter having the world number 2 and the world number 3, as well as a few other top-notch players. That in and of itself makes it a difficult quarter to pick, because even if you say Gerwen, Price, and Peter Wright's chances are equal, throwing everyone else out, that at most gives you a 50% chance of being right, and the other players have greater than zero chance, much greater than zero chance. But I'm going to actually say that I think the top quarter is the most difficult to pick, because the number of players who could potentially come in and play so well but have question marks hanging over them. Nathan Aspinall, for instance, made the Premier League final, meant he had a great Premier League campaign, but didn't bring his best on finals day, and has been, I don't want to say inconsistent this year, but has not been consistently great. He's been on his B game a little bit too much to win titles, but we know that even his B game is pretty darn good, and if he's at his A game, he can get through this quarter. He might be the best player overall in this quarter. Then you also have James Wade, who's won double-digit major titles. You have Joe Cullen, who is, alongside someone in the bottom quarter, one of the 2 most underrated players in World Darts, as I've said multiple times on here, and just happens to be the number 1 seed. And that's not even getting to the 2 most inconsistent players in this quarter. And I don't mean that as a disrespect. I mean that respectfully, because of how good Jamie Hughes and Dave Chisnell are when they're on. We're talking players who average in the 110s, and it's not surprising when they average in the 110s. But unfortunately for both of them, it's also not surprising when they average in the 80s. And we saw that from Dave Chisnell just this past week in Risa, be absolutely brilliant one day and nowhere to be found the next. But you only need to win a couple or 3 matches to get through that quarter. I think the fact that you have those 2 players in there alongside the other ones that I mentioned makes this the most difficult quarter to pick.
Now we'll move on to our next guest on this week's show, and it is with the former major winner and the upcoming debutant in the PDC World Championship, Deta Hedman. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the runner-up on this year's PDC Women's Series, Deta Hedman. Thanks very much for joining us, Deta. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
It's been just over a week now since the Women's Series and yourself, along with Lisa Ashton, winning the 2 spots for the PDC World Championship. What's the last week been like? Has it sunk in what you've achieved?
Oh, last week I think I was still in the clouds. I'm all right now. I'm back down to ground now.
Good to hear. Well, you spoke to my colleague Hannah at the O2 during the BDO World Championship at the start of the year. A lot of uncertainty even back then about the future of the BDO, the ladies' game. How were you feeling when you left the O2 about what 2020 could have in store?
Oh, when I left the O2 after the World Championship, to be honest with you, not a lot. I think with the BDO, I was just like looking. I couldn't see any future, to be honest with you. The promises that was made and broken every time, every corner, I was losing hope with them, to be honest. And I really couldn't see a way round whether somebody could come in to save it. But, hey-o, what do I know?
Well, yourself, you had another good run at the Dutch Open in February, getting to the semi-finals, and then we go from 5,000 odd players that weekend to a lockdown a month, 5-6 weeks later. How did you cope with the whole lockdown here in the UK?
Nothing changed for me because working for Royal Mail, I'm fortunate that I had a job, and in fairness, I've been working right through it. It's been manic because obviously the lockdown, a lot of people doing stuff online. Not that I'm complaining, it keeps me in a job, but yeah, I've been very, very busy.
I'm glad to. It kept you busy. And in August, the darts, I suppose, you got a bit of news about when it could return. The PDC announcing the Women's Series and the Grand Slam qualifier for this month in October. What was your reaction when you first saw the announcement?
You know, I thought it was fantastic. Something there for the ladies to look forward to. But in my head, I didn't think it was going to go ahead. Right up to even the last minute, I was thinking they're going to pull the plug, you know, with the pandemic. Not that they. So I was absolutely delighted when it went ahead. You know, it's a platform that you can look forward to something bigger and better, hopefully, for the ladies, that they can say, okay, I want to make this a career, and I can dedicate to practice and do what I need to do to make it into it.
And a week before the Women's Series, you did manage to get some in-person darts in. You played a couple of days on the Challenge Tour. Was that the first experience of in-person tournaments since lockdown, or did you get any other things in?
No, yeah, that was the first thing, because obviously I've got no online setup or anything of the sort. So really, Paul said to me, we were talking about it, and then I said to him, for that kind of money and whatever, I said, no, I'll just go into the ladies' tour. And a week before he said to me, I've put you in it, he said, you can't just go and play cold. He said, it's just a bit of match practice. And obviously I started putting in some extra work, getting up extra early to put an half hour in here, and then obviously at work I did it, but I took a bit more time out of my lunch. And when I went to the Challenge Tour, one of the days on Saturday, I did extremely well. I played some darts that I didn't think, not that I couldn't play it, but on a consistent level for those 3 games straight after each other. And I was delighted, and I just thought, okay, hopefully I can take it into the ladies' game. Because when you play a man, and that quality and quantity of the field, you have a different mindset, because you just kind of look on it, I've got nothing to lose. Although in the ladies you haven't got anything to lose, but you still feel the majority you should be, but it doesn't quite go that way.
Yeah, well, the extra work definitely did pay off. Some impressive results that weekend on the Challenge Tour. You mentioned they had a run to a last 16, a pair of 90-plus averages. How much confidence did that give you then? You had that bit of match practice to then go back to Barnsley the following weekend for the ladies' events.
Well, in my head, I just thought, well, after I came back from the Challenge Tour, I still kept practicing to try and, you know, tighten up a few things that I noticed was wrong, and I just hope that I could play on that level and just keep it going. Then, I'm being honest, I didn't think I would get through. I was just looking to pick up a bit of money. To be totally honest with you, I was thinking to myself, as long as I'm there in the mix, as long as I'm there in the semis, if I can make the semi, then I've made a little bit of money. And that was all I looked at. And then after the first day, when we finished, and I think I was on top, I thought, good God.
Well, what a weekend it was for you, and it was exciting following it back home here online, especially that last day. I mean, when you'd lost to Fallon Sherrick in the quarterfinals that last event, were you aware that you were in that top 2? Because there was a bit of confusion online, us following it, whether she was going to be able to catch up if she won the title.
Well, after I lost to Fallon, I just sat down and I just said to Paul, do you know what? I've blown it. I said, because to me, in my head, I had to beat Fallon. And when I didn't, I just thought, that's it, it's done. I was, in fairness, not making no excuse, I was absolutely shattered on Sunday, because you have to wake up so early and to register, and because the 2 tournament, forgetting that I'm a night worker. And after I did so well the first day, I could not sleep. For the life of me, I could not sleep. I think I had a couple of hours, and I'm thinking, God, how am I going to get through the day? And I was just playing on what I'm used to, I suppose. But yeah, when I sat down, I just said to Paul, I've blown it. I won't tell you the final words, but I did say upload it, and that was it. And he said to me, did I want to stay and watch the final and that? I said, yeah, why not? I said, it doesn't matter. I said, I got some shekels, so hey-o.
Well, Fallon goes on to win that final event, ties for second spot with you, and it goes down to legs one, I think something like 85-83 in the end, in your favour. What was the feeling like when you found out you'd done enough to finish in the top two and qualify for the PDC World Championship?
Well, when I was sitting there, Peter and Graham came over to us, and they said to me, you've qualified, and I just went, don't be winding me up. I said, just don't be winding me up, because I won't be happy. And they went, no, we're not winding you up, honestly. You've got through. I said, well, how can I got through when and they said, it's on count back on the legs. And I think one of the defeat where I beat Fallon 5-1, and obviously the other leg came through because I was winning like 4-0. I think I won 3 or 4 games 4-0. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. But, hey-o, they said to me, I've got through on 2 legs. And I just put my hand in my towel I had in my hand and just started blubbering like a baby. And, yeah, I could have jumped for joy, but obviously Fallon still had to play, so I had to just put my head in the towel, and so that I didn't make too much noise.
Well, a brilliant moment, and it was great to see for your supporters and everyone who's been following your career for a long time. And you mentioned earlier you went in there looking to maybe get a bit of prize money, weren't really thinking about the top 2, and I know the BDO World Championship is just one tournament, but last year you've gone out first round both times. Did you have any doubts then that you could still mix it with the top ladies, or has that belief always stayed with you?
Do you know, playing the BDO World Championship, it's when you go to play the tournament, you're all there intermingling, and people get in your head. And when you get yourself into that right place, there is always someone around that knocks you out of it. And I won't dwell on anything like that, because I made 3 finals. But the last one, I was ready to walk away from anything like that, if I'm being honest with you. Because the last year or so coming up to it, not been very pleasant in the BDO. So, but I won't dwell on that. It's done. But when, as you say, when I finished there, in fairness, I didn't even really want to be there. And one of the reasons I played in that World Championship, because 2 of my sponsors, L-Style and 180, and I just could not, just walk away from it, because they are my sponsor. So I have to honour my sponsor, whether I wanted to play it or not. And I went up there, but when you're not feeling something and you're trying and deep down you're not feeling it, it won't happen. And that's how I was at the O2. I was on that stage. I even went up and had a practice earlier on before it all started. And I was dead inside when I woke up there. And when I see what was going on around me, a few things that was happening, I wasn't in the right place. So for me, yeah, if I'd win, great, and then I lost, so it was no big deal to me, to be honest with you. That was how I felt.
Well, let's look to the future then, and hopefully more positive things for the ladies' game, and the reaction among people on social media has been largely positive to the women's series. We're all hoping that the WDF will get up and running when things are safe to do so, but could you see the PDC maybe expand this women's series into a tour for ladies next year? Is that what you'd like to see happen?
Oh, God, yes. Of course I would. And obviously the WDF is working really hard behind the scene as well to get all the countries up and running. But unfortunately, this pandemic, nobody is sure. No one's sure when it will all stop. No one is sure when you can get back to some kind of formality. Because most of the country relies on other participants from different countries traveling to it. I mean, the PDC's got a nice little niche in how they can do it, because it's only a certain amount of people. It's not like, if I give an example, like Romania, they rely on people coming from all over the country to make their tournament. Same as the Dutch Open, as you know, the amount of people that goes to it, that has to be put back, because they rely on the entries which help fund their national team. So yeah, the WDF is working hard to get all that going, and as I say, hopefully the PDC put a series on for the ladies as well. So it's got to be good all round. You know, having choices is good.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, we saw you put on Twitter at the weekend you played a friendly with your Oxfordshire County teammates. You called 3 matches as well. How important is it going to be between now and the World Championship to get any match practice in that you can? Because it's going to be difficult, isn't it?
Oh God, yes, it's going to be very, very difficult. But yeah, everything was in place. They all checked everything with the local authority, and everybody was fantastic. You know, everything laid out, one-way system, all the sanitizers and masks. Yeah, it was really, really good. And that's probably, you know what, I actually quite like it that way. You wear your mask when you sit down there, you have to listen to a whole load of bullshit. But yeah, so I don't know. I'll probably get up and running at some point with my online thing and see if I can get some practice in that way. But at the end of the day, you know what? I'm just going to do what I've been doing. It serves me in good purpose, so yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be working. And after you won that title on the Saturday, which put you top going into the halfway point, I put on Twitter, I don't think anyone would begrudge you getting one of those 2 World Championship spots. You deserve to get that reception from the fans, but we're not quite sure if we're going to get fans, if it's going to be behind closed doors or not for the World Championship. What's your thoughts on that?
I've been asked this question, but you know what? It doesn't really matter to me. Just the fact that I've got there, and I never believed in my wildest dream that I would be doing something like that. I'll be 61 next month. I keep telling everybody. I never actually imagined that I would be there. So yeah, I'm not really worried about it at all. Whether we have a fan base there or not, I will just enjoy the moment of being part of the PDC World Championship.
2 more questions before I let you go. You are going to be the first ever brother and sister to qualify for the PDC World Championship. Your brother Al played Bob Anderson first round back in 2003. Is there a bit of a sibling rivalry going on? You want to be the first one to win a match at the World Championship in the PDC?
Do you know what? I haven't even thought of anything like that. And I haven't spoken to Al just lately, to be honest with you. I'll get in touch with him and see. But no, we don't have rivalry like that at all. I think because we're brother and sister, obviously, it's a talking point, isn't it? But no, we don't rival each other. We just do our thing, and what will be, will be. We just get on with it. We always have done.
Fair enough. Well, important question to end with is going to be your walk-on song. Rob Cross copied your previous one. Now Glenn Durrant is using your one that you're using at the moment. What are you thinking of walking out to for the World Championship?
You know what? I actually don't know. Obviously, the songs I'm picking, everybody loves them. And only winners take those songs. As you see how Glenn has excelled since he nicked my song. I don't know yet. We're having a look. I'll probably go for some foreign song that nobody will want.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to finding out what it is when the time comes round, and congratulations again on qualifying for the World Championship, and wish you all the best for when it comes round, and thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Deta for joining us. Now let's have a chat about our sponsors, Low 6, who present this programme. And we've got a big contest for you guys this week on Thursday. So tomorrow, when you're listening to this, the start of the European Championship, we've got a £100 prize pool. It's free to enter, free to play. We've got over 100 plus of you, I think, so far that have entered into it. And it's simple. All you've got to do is predict the 16 winners of the first round of the tournament over in Germany. And we've said as well, if any of you get the 16 right in the contest, we'll invite you on the show next week to be our guest tipster and hopefully give our listeners a bit more value than myself and you, Burton, do every week. And if there is more than one winner, then we will pick someone at random. But we haven't got time to go through all 16 games. What we'll do is we'll go through the first 4 games based on the order of play, starting on 3 o'clock on Thursday. First game of the tournament, it is Jamie Hughes against Dave Chisnell. How do you see the first game going?
I have no idea. And that kind of goes to the previous question. It really depends which Jamie Hughes and which Dave Chisnell turn up. And, these two players have the potential to play the greatest best out of 11 match we've ever seen, and it's also possible that they could play a game that doesn't end till Friday. That's being a little harsh because they at least play at a good pace. Chizzy, it's been bizarre this year because he's shown flashes that he's better than ever, but he's also shown flashes that he's more inconsistent than ever. Jamie Hughes hasn't played as well as he did last year, but still has been serviceable. That's why he's 17th heading into the European Championship. 16th. But I'll give it the edge to Chizzy. His breakthrough has to come sometime. Maybe it'll be this week, and he'll start off with a 6-2 win.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. It's a hard one to call based on current form. You've got Dave Chisnell, who at the weekend averages 104 in his first game. Then his next game averages 82. So it's hard to judge what Dave Chisnell we're going to get at the moment. But on the other hand, Jamie Hughes, he was 5-0 up a couple of weeks ago against Mensah Suljovic, ends up losing 6-5. So he's not quite in the best form at the moment. I could see it going Jamie Hughes' way again if Dave Chisnell turns up not in the best of form and Jamie Hughes turns up and plays like he can. Of course, he can go and win the game, but I think I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with Dave Chisnell to take the opener.
The second match goes down to the third quarter, and it's Krzysztof Ratajski against Steve West. Who are you picking in this one?
Well, for Steve West, a first appearance in this tournament since 2018, and we go back to 2 years ago when he beat Michael van Gerwen on the way to get into the quarterfinals and averaged 100 in that quarterfinal against Simon Whitlock and ended up losing it. So since then, we've not seen him perform quite at that level or go on a deep run on these TV events. But it's good to see him back in the field for it. But he has got a very hard game in that first round. Krzysztof Ratajski, as I mentioned on this show earlier, he's one of the players in form at the moment. At the weekend, 99, 102, 102 averages, didn't quite make it all the way, but he is performing at a top level. And even that game against the host nation qualified Franz Roach, unbelievable game, one of the best games I've seen on the European Tour for a little while. He is playing well, and if he turns up and plays like he has been, I think it is only going to go one way. So I'm going to go with the Polish Eagle to take this one.
Yeah, I mean, Steve West has gone through a couple dry years recently, and it's why he's dropped out. I mean, he was just outside the top 16 a couple of years ago, but he's stopped qualifying for events, and now he's well outside the top 32. This is his first major that he's qualified for that isn't open to 64 more players since this event 2 years ago, and I'm not seeing enough to think that he's going to beat Ratajski if Ratajski's anywhere near his best. Ratajski's still looking for that big TV breakthrough in the PDC, but he doesn't need to be at that level that'll need to lift the title to beat Steve West, at least I think. So I'm going to go as well with Ratajski. I'll go 6-3.
Third game up, and it is Mervyn King against Ian White. How do you see this one going?
This is another really difficult one to pick. Mervyn King, as I've said multiple times on this show, I think you have as well, has really had a rebound year after 2019, where there were legitimate questions if he was going to start dropping down the rankings. He did miss the match play this year, but that was because of COVID, basically. He was playing well enough that if the season didn't get postponed, I think he would have easily gotten in. He got back into the World Grand Prix. He's here. Ian White was moved in the other direction, but has had a couple decent weeks to show that he's starting to get back towards the player who was looking like one of the top 10 players or top 8 players in the world at the end of last year. I think Ian White, even off his best game, is still a little bit better than Mervyn King getting back towards his best. So I'm going to go Ian White to just get over the line. I'll make it a last leg decider, 6-5.
Oh, well, I'm going to go in the other direction for this one. I'm going to go with Mervyn King, and it's been some good times for Mervyn King over the last few months. The European Tour, that's where we've seen his best stuff on that stage, going into Germany to play and Belgium. The first one, of course, to play these events, got to a semi-final and a quarter-final. And yeah, his run of getting to the World Match Plays, 13 years in a row since he came over from the BDO. He was in the match play, wasn't in it this year, but his perfect record in playing in the European Championship. I think he's the only player to have played in every single version of it since 2008. He's kept that run going. At the minute, I think I'm going to back Mervyn King on this one. Ian White, not the player he was 12 months ago. He's struggling for form. The European Tour, he had so many good times on that last year. This year, he lost his first game 3 out of the 4. It was a big run that he had to the semi-finals a few weeks ago that got him in the field for this. So he is capable of going on a run. But I'm just going to go with Mervyn King on this one. Like you, I think it's going to go tight, but I'm going in the other direction.
All right, and then last but not least, although 4th out of 16 overall, we get our first winner on the tour this year, Jose de Sousa. De Sousa as he goes against Jeffrey Deswan. How do you see this one?
Yeah, hard one to call. I think if both players are playing on their game, and at the minute I think there's only one player that is playing well, and that is Jose De Sousa. And of course we spoke about him a couple of weeks ago when he won that title. It was great to see another first time winner on the tour, and maybe something that was going to happen. We were just waiting for it to happen, and it all clicked for him on that weekend. Okay, he didn't do quite as well this past weekend, but he's got to go into this with confidence, and this is his debut in the tournament. He's ticking off these big events, playing in them for the first time, but he's not had a big run on TV yet. Now he's got that big run that he's had on stage on the European Tour. Maybe this could be the weekend for him to go on one of those runs, get to a last 16 quarterfinal for the first time. Jeffrey Desvan was very close to missing out on this tournament. I think he was 31st in the end on the list, but he's in. He's capable of going deep in this. I think he got to the quarterfinals last year, but on current form, I'm going to have to go with the Portuguese number one on this one.
Yeah, I have to agree. And Jeffrey Desvan has not been the easiest sailing for him the last couple of years, and I think maybe just the pressure now of having to defend ranking money for the first time is getting to him a bit. He's been playing poorly, but he's not been playing as freely as he was when he won back his tour card and was making semifinals in TV events for fun, and beating Michael Van Gerwen in TV events for fun. Jose De Sousa is going in the opposite direction, and that's just flying right now. In his second year as a professional, and coming off his first European Tour title just a couple weeks ago. All the signs point towards the Portuguese player to win this match. He absolutely could lose, but I don't think he will. I'm going to go to the Portuguese number one and the Euro Tour number 3 to get through to the second round.
Well, those are our picks for the first 4 games. You guys, if you're going to get involved in our contest, got to pick all 16 games for the Thursday opening session. And if you want to get involved, download the Low 6 app. 18 plus, UK residents only. T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org, and don't forget, not just the £100 prize pool that you're playing for, free entry of course, but a chance to be on the show next week as our guest tipster. So best of luck everyone if you're playing along.
And now we'll have our question of the week. We've talked about all 4 quarters. I don't think we've mentioned the 4 top seeds. Joe Cullen number 1, Gerwyn Price number 2, Jose De Sousa number 3, and Devin Peterson number 4. Which of those top 4 seeds do you think will go the furthest in the European Championship this week?
Well, just looking at the poll at the minute on Twitter, and we've still got a few days for it to run before the tournament starts, but a lot of you going with Gerwyn Price, 70% of you going with him. Joe Cullen, the top seed, getting 12%, Jose De Sousa getting 10%, Devin Peterson getting 8%. So I think a lot of that is based on the current rankings. Gerwyn Price only recently gone up to number 2, and the other 3 players, yes, you've got Joe Cullen now back in the top 16 after that win at the weekend, but the other 2 players just underneath that top 32, so maybe haven't quite gone as the TV events as we've seen the likes of Gerwyn Price and Joe Cullen go in the past. So it'd probably be an easier one to go with Gerwyn, given that the form that we've seen him this year. He's making a strong case to be Player of the Year. Still a lot of events to come, but he's continued to improve. But as I mentioned in a previous answer, he is, for me personally, in the toughest quarter of the draw, and for that reason, I'm going to go against the majority of our listeners on the poll at the moment. I'm going to go with someone else. A hard one to pick between those 3 players. Yes, it could be Joe Cullen. I think he's out of those 4 players in that little section of the draw. I think at the minute he'll be the favourite to get to the quarterfinals. And then you go Devin Peterson as well. Out of those 4 players on current form, I think you back him to get to the quarterfinals as well. But I'm going to go with the other player that I haven't mentioned there out of those 3. I'm going to go with Jose to go on a deep run, and he's not made a last 16 on the TV yet, but I think this could be his week. I've tipped him to win that first game against Jeffrey Desvan. Then it's Johnny Clayton or Max Hopp. Johnny Clayton's come back into a bit of form. Max Hopp starting to get there a little bit, but again, I think he'll go into that one as the favourite if he gets through. And then a quarter-final, you've either got one of the Smiths, Michael Smith or Ross Smith, Danny Noppert or Dirk van Dijvenbode. Again, once you get to that stage of the tournament, and this is what I quite like about this week, okay, it's going to be a little bit different with it being the 16 games in one session, but the way they've worked it as well, you've got Saturday night, just the one session, quarterfinals, top billing, and then you go into the Sunday, you've got that break, and then you go to the Sunday night, the semi-finals and the finals. So it kind of gives the quarterfinals a little bit more importance than usual. Usually it's on the Sunday afternoon, and it's kind of an afterthought, really. Okay, yeah, we'll get these games out of the way, and then it's all down to later on in the day, but it's one session for that day, all about the quarterfinals on that Saturday. So I'm liking how they're running it. And I think this is going to be the week for Jose to go on a deep run. So out of those 4 seeds, I'm going to go with him.
A lot of disagreement this week. I think there's 2 different questions that could be asked here. If the question was who would I be most surprised to find out didn't make the quarterfinals, I think the answer has to be Devin Peterson, because he has to be the heavy favorite against Andy Hamilton, and on current form, he would have to be the heavy favorite against either his former stablemate Rob Cross or against Martin Klärmacher, which means he's the one of the top 4 seeds who would be, I think, the heaviest favorite, or should be the heaviest favorite, to reach the quarterfinals. But that's not what the question is here. It's who do I think's most likely to go furthest? And I'm actually going to have to say Gerwyn Price. Even with that quarter, the way he's playing right now and the consistency he's playing at right now, he should be the player who's most likely to win this title, even with that tough quarter, even with a potential second round against Peter Wright, who's skipped the last few events, or Gabriel Clemens, who there's no guarantee Peter Wright will get past, even with one of Mensur Suljovic, Daryl Gurney, Christopher Teisker, Steve West potentially waiting in the quarterfinal. I still think Gerwyn Price right now is playing the best of anyone in this field and is the most likely to lift the title. And therefore, he is, of the top 4, I'm going to have to say the one most likely to go the furthest.
Well, we shall see. And guys, if you haven't voted on our poll yet on Twitter, go and check it out before the tournament gets underway. Let us know who you think is going to be the top 4 seeds, who's going to go the furthest in the tournament. But let's get into our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the director of the Dutch Darts Association, Paul Engelbertink. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the director of the Dutch Darts Association, Paul Engelbertink. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much.
Now, firstly, we'll start at the beginning for you in darts. Where did your interest come from, and how long have you been involved in the sport through playing or being an official?
My interest for the sport came a long time ago, and I think my interest came with the interest of a lot of other Dutch players, and that was obviously when Raymond van Barneveld was playing on the Lakeside stage back in 1998, I believe, and he won the title. It was a massive success in the Netherlands. It was live on television, and it was, the beginning, I think, of a lot of people in the Netherlands for being interested in darts.
So before that first title for Barney, go on to have a lot of success in the BDO and the PDC. What was the darts scene like in the Netherlands, the general concept of darts? Was there much interest in it before then?
Yeah, there was a lot of interest, especially in The Hague, in a part of the Netherlands. And then I speak about the years 90, 80, I think, something like that. But the main success and particularly came after the successes of Raymond van Barneveld. I believe you can say that. He's a true icon, and what he did for the sports in the Netherlands is massive. On
yourself, though, in September of last year, you were appointed as the new director of the NDB, the Dutch Darts Association. You'd been involved with them a little while, I think, since around 2012. But how did it come about you getting involved in that side of darts?
I was always interested in sports in general, but particularly also in darts. And a position at the NDB office came free. And, I simply applied because I wanted to join and I wanted to help to bring darts in the Netherlands to a higher level. And since 2012, indeed, I'm working for the Dutch Darts Association and have done that with a lot of pleasure.
Earlier in 2019, you were put in as the interim director after Niels de Ruyter stepped down. How did you find that period stepping in to help out? And did that give you the urge to maybe want to take that role on full-time like you have done now?
Yeah, it was a good trial for sure. But obviously it's a different position to do it interim than to do it, after Niels left, obviously. You want to put your own, you want to give your own direction a go as well. I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of things to develop, especially internationally, obviously, with all the Darts Association now, with the BDO not being here anymore, new direction with the WDF. So there's a lot going on. So interesting times. And I think I have a really interesting job and I really enjoy it.
Good to hear. Well, you probably couldn't have picked a more challenging first year to have in the role, especially the last 6 or 7 months with the pandemic. And as you mentioned there, the BDO falling away. But how have you found it, though, trying to run the NDB in that time?
Well, this is a really good question. Lately, I said it's been a really tough last couple of months because normally, since I started with working for the Dutch Darts Association, every year is in a way similar to the year before. And obviously, sometimes you organize a European Cup or whatever, and that's new then in that year. But this year, literally everything was different. We had a lot of problems, obviously, with the BDO. I started in September. Well, then straight after September, everything started with the BDO. We took off the BDO points from the Dutch Open, which was interesting. Obviously, a lot of things going on at the BDO World Championships. Then, luckily, we had the Dutch Open, which was a success. And after that, everything changed with the pandemic, with Corona. And it was really interesting. I've done a lot of things that I expected not to be doing this year. And I had a few goals for myself. Some of them we managed, but some of them we didn't due to Corona. So in a way, I'm happy with how things are going. In a way, I'm, sometimes a bit disappointed with the things, with how things are going. And for example, with canceling the Dutch Open, that is a decision that I didn't like to take.
Yeah, you touched on the Dutch Open. Going to come on to that news that came out over the weekend in a moment. But before we do, for anyone who hasn't been, including myself in here as well, just tell us what makes the Dutch Open such a special event.
Well, have you ever been to the Dutch Open?
No, not yet.
Well, you have to then. The Dutch Open is not just an event. It's not just a darts event. It's so much more. It's a real party. It's a Dutch darts party. We have so many people there. We have a party tent there. We have the atmosphere is incredible. Yeah, I honestly think that you should come and should experience it. All the people that I speak that come there for the first time, they are really amazed. They don't have a clue what they see and what it's like. So that's basically what I could say to everybody listening to the show as well. Make sure that at one day you come to the Dutch Open and experience what it is. I saw a tweet from one of our master callers, and he said as well, it's the biggest and best event, and that's because of the atmosphere, because of the MCs, because of the party tent, because of everybody being in such a positive vibe there. It's something that you should enjoy.
Definitely, and in terms of numbers, it is the biggest Open in World Darts. You have something like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 players all competing in various events over the weekend. A lot of history behind the event as well. Been running for close to 50 years now, and of course one of the big moments, Sean Greatbatch hitting the first live 9-darter on TV. What are your favourite memories when you think back to the event so far?
Well, one of my the first thing that comes into my mind is the 9-darter of Daryl Fitton. I think that was 2014 or something, 2015. I'm not sure exactly what year it was, but I remember standing in the hall and Daryl going for a 9-darter, and it completely exploded. There was beer flying everywhere, people cheering, and he won a car at that moment. We had a car at the main stage, and he won it. So that was just 5 minutes of madness, which I remember straight really well.
Having all those people involved playing, what would you say are the key things to making sure that the event does run smoothly during that weekend each year?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we have a great relationship with all of our partners and suppliers. And we have a team there from around 50 till 60 volunteers that know exactly what they have to do. We take almost 2 months preparation, and we inform our volunteers really well, and they know exactly what to do. Most of them are there already for years. And I think that is the main secret behind the Dutch Open, is that we have a team with people that know how to run an event smoothly. And that's something that you need.
And the news, of course, which came out over the weekend, is that next year's Dutch Open, originally penciled in for that first weekend of February, pushed back now to September. A sensible decision, probably, given the current climate at the moment. But talk us through it. Was it an easy one to make?
Well, in a way, it is an easy one to make because everybody knows, you guys in the UK as well, but here in Europe as well, that in recent weeks, the coronavirus has had too many opportunities to spread. So all kinds of governments here in the Netherlands as well decide that stricter measures are needed. So in that way, it's an easy decision because you will understand that February will come too early to have 7,000 people packed in one venue to have an darts event / party. Yeah, that's not possible. Simply not possible in February. Then again, the decision gets harder because then you have to decide, okay, what are we going to do then? Are we going to cancel it for the whole year, or are we going to organize it at another time? And in a way, it looks a simple decision to say, okay, we're going to September, but it's not just us to make that decision. Obviously, we have a venue that needs availability. We work with different partners and different suppliers, as I just said. So everybody needs to be on the same page. So we had to find a proper date. And even looking for September, October, it is already hard to find a good date there. But we did find one. It's the first weekend of September, 3, 4, 5 September. Yeah, and I'm really happy that we have the event as the Dutch Open is, and it's ranked platinum by the WDF. So I'm extremely happy that we have it on the diary, although it's not February, it's 7 months later.
Glad to hear you've got a new date anyway, and we've seen small crowds for PDC events in Austria and Germany over the last couple of months, still behind closed doors here in the UK. But how are things in the Netherlands right now?
Yeah, in the Netherlands, most tournaments, darts, but also other sports are all cancelled, unless you have certain events that are a bit smaller or that you can organize and where you can keep and that is happening with the PDC events. Obviously, not many players, and you can do certain testing. But for example, with an event like the Dutch Open, where you have 7,000 people, that's impossible. But things are not looking that well in the Netherlands. I believe government said that they will look that they will see what happens in the next couple of days, and then we may be heading into a full lockdown again, which is obviously not good for economy, but also not good for all the sports event in our country.
Two more before we let you go, and should talk a little bit about Dutch darts in general. We've got the WDF Virtual Cup going on at the moment. Richard Veenstra and Arlene de Graaf flying the flag for you guys. You've got the PDC World Cup coming up next week. You've got Michael van Gerwen and Danny Noppert representing you guys. What do you make of the state of Dutch darts right now, though, with the players that you've got?
Well, I think Dutch darts is doing really well. It's doing really well over the last few years, obviously. With Michael van Gerwen being number one for so long already. Yeah, I think we have everything well organized here in the Netherlands. We have a good system behind it. And the best players can play easily at a national level against each other. We are obviously also not very big as a country. So I think we have a really well organized and good system behind it. And if you look at the different rankings, for example, the BDO ranking, WDF ranking, PDC ranking, there's always Dutch players in the top. Like you said, with the Virtual Cup, Arlene de Graaf, Richard Veenstra, two really well-known players that can win it. And I also think that Danny Noppert, together with Michael van Gerwen, are one of the favorites to win the title. So it's looking very well, looking good. And
before we let you go, should get your thoughts on another recent announcement from Dutch darts, your most popular player ever, the player that we mentioned at the beginning, Raymond van Barneveld, coming back out of retirement. He's going to be going to Q School next year to try and get back on the PDC circuit. What was the reaction from yourself and everyone really in Netherlands to the news when it came out?
I was surprised, and I think with me, most of the darts fans were surprised, because a comeback after 9 months is quite soon. So in that case, I was really surprised. But yeah, well, Van Barneveld is a real icon, like I said already. The man has meant so much for the sport. He basically made the sport big in the Netherlands. So yeah, I think it's wonderful that he's going to start again. Whether it will be a success, I don't know. He will need to play all the tournaments again, travel and stay in hotels. And yeah, all those things were the things that made him really, really tired and were the things that made him want to quit darts. But yeah, I think he should go for it. He has a good team around him now, I believe. And he has enough talent to be able to beat all the best players in the circuit, that's for sure. So who knows? I wish him all the best of luck.
Well, Paul, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Really appreciate your time, and best wishes for the rest of the year and next year when the Dutch Open hopefully comes around in September, and it's all good to go around then. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and promise me to come to the Dutch Open one day.
Thanks again to Paul for joining us, and we'll finish up with a couple of listener questions. First one comes from Andrew Kinsman. He says, if recent Euro Tour winners and great friends Devon Peterson and Joe Cullen were to meet in the semis this coming weekend, who do you fancy to win?
Oh, it's a tough one because they're both playing so well right now. If they both get through to the semifinals, I think both of them are going to feel similar amount of pressure, but as well as similar amount of confidence that this could be their week. And it makes it really, really tough to say. But I'll go Cullen as the number one seed, as the player who's been in the semifinals of a major before, as the player who has that little bit more experience. I think he is more likely to get through it, but I think it'll be a tight match. I hope it will be a good match. I mean, there's every chance it'll be, like the semifinal between Glenn Dern and Gary Anderson in the Premier League, where it's just awful. I hope that's not the case. I hope they bring out the best in each other, but I fancy Cullen to just get over the line.
Oh, there is a lot of disagreement on the show this week. I've got down Devon Peterson, and like you, it is a hard one to call because, as you say, they are both playing well and they'll both go into this week with confidence. Devon, we didn't see him this past weekend. He hasn't qualified for that European Tour event, the fourth one, but it's only a few weeks ago that he did win that first one, and he's a player that is playing some unbelievable stuff at the moment. And Joe Cullen as well, we said, comes into this week as the top seed. And if you were to say to me right now, that will be what the semi-final is going to be in the top half of the draw on Sunday, I'd happily take that right now, and I'd say I'm going to go and put a small punt on both of them to go each way for the tournament and make a bit of money out of it. But we'll see. I think if they do get to the semi-final, they will have come through some tough games. I think it could be Nathan Aspinall or James Wade are the top seeds that Joe could play in the quarterfinal. And then you're looking at Devon Peterson's run to the potential semi-final. It could be Michael van Gerwen in that quarterfinal. So they're going to have to come through some tough opposition to get there. I don't think they've played on TV before or played on a stage before, at least in the PDC anyway. I think they've played maybe 4 times on the floor, and the one I remember straight away is back in the autumn series, the 7-2 win, I think it was, for Devon Peterson. In the end, it was 2-2, I think, and then Devon went on an unbelievable run. I think it was, I've got down here, 14-15, 14-15, 15 dart legs to come through 7-2. He lost in the final in the end, but of course, he got that monkey off his back on the European Tour just after. But yeah, I'm going to go with Devon. I'll go the other way.
And the last question comes from friend of the show, Juanita McDade. Big few weeks coming up, obviously European Championships that we're talking about, but also the World Cup, Grand Slam Players Championship, and the Winter Series all over the next month. Who do you think will be the standout or standouts over the next few tournaments?
Yeah, I've got it down as the next few, so I'm only going through the next couple of weeks. I haven't looked that far ahead, so I've gone with this week and then the World Cup next week. And if my maths is right, I think there's 16 players playing this week that are going to be in the World Cup next week. So I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit and go with players that are going to be playing in both of those events. And one player that jumps off the page straight away is Danny Noppert. He's right at the bottom of that draw for the European Championship. Could go under the radar, get past Dirk van Dijvenbode in the first round, and then Michael or Ross Smith in the second round. And he's well away there. I think he's got a chance of doing well. And then the following week, making his World Cup debut with Michael van Gerwen. Okay, we've spoken about Michael on the show already, not in the best of form, but looking at that quarter of the draw, looking at that half of the draw, I think they all really fancy their chances of going deep, getting to a quarterfinal, getting to a semi-final. And once you get to that stage, the confidence potentially could be back for Michael, and Danny Noppert as well, getting that deep into one of the big events will fancy it as well. So I'll go Danny Noppert for my player to watch out for the next 2 weeks.
He was on my list of someone I was going to consider, and I also want to avoid some of the higher ranked players. But I'll go another player who's might be playing second fiddle in his World Cup team and might be playing second fiddle this week to his compatriot, but has every chance to have a deep run both this week and obviously in the World Cup, and that's Johnny Clayton. As you said earlier today, he's been coming back into some form recently. And, it wasn't that long ago that he was on the outside looking in for the World Grand Prix. What did he do? He only made a deep run in the European Tour and then made a final in the European Tour and then just started looking like the Johnny Clayton of old, which is just someone who can beat anyone on any given day. He has a good opportunity in the European Championship this upcoming week, playing in that bottom quarter against Max Hopp and then possibly against Jose de Sousa in the second round. Has that opportunity, potential against Danny Noppert. We could have our tips going head-to-head in the quarterfinal. But I think he has a very good opportunity. But then to play with the person who right now is arguably the best in the world in the World Cup, that's a great opportunity for him. I think it's Johnny Clayton who is a player to look out for to really really reestablish himself, I should say, as one of the best in the planet. Anything else for this week?
Just to say, as always, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Andrew and Juanita for sending in the questions. Thanks to our guests. Really appreciate their time. And one last plug as well. Don't forget to get involved in our low six competition on Thursday, the first day of the European Championship. A chance to win part of the £100 prize pool, and potentially, if you get all the games right, be on our show next week as our guest tipster. So lots to play for there. Get involved if you can, and if you are based in the UK. Unfortunately, if you're not going to be able to play on this occasion. But yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll be back next week.
Although if you want to tweet us your picks and get all 16 right, I feel like we should let you come on and give your tips next week, even if you're outside the UK. So tweet us your picks, because I'd like to see that. I really would like to see someone go 16 for 16. It is extremely unlikely, and if you can do it wherever you live, you at least deserve the right to come on and give your picks and make us look like fools next week.
You can't see me right now, but I am nodding in agreement. So yeah, I'm 100% behind that. Anyone who's listening outside the UK, tweet us your picks, and if you get 16 out of 16, we'll put you in with a chance as well.
That way I don't have to give picks next week. But thanks to our guests, thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to everyone who's listened, sent in questions. As I always say around this time of year, we're getting close to the World Championships. The field's starting to get known. We would love to know who you would like us to try to get on, of some of those players from around the world that we might not have ever had on before. So let us know what you'd like. It is a different year than normal. We only have one World Championship coming on, and we know that it's a difficult time for many people, but we hope that at least for an hour and a half each week to bring you something interesting. So let us know what you want. For Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt. Thank you for listening, and hang tight until next week.